this toolkit feature of this class is basically my way of sharing with you books or other references that I have found useful, sort of a book that you want to put on your bookshelf, a tool tip of the week, so a piece of equipment that you want to put in your toolbox, an organization of the week that you want to have on your Rolodex. Is Rolodex a thing anymore? Anyway, something that you want to put in your phone, something you want to have access to, bookmark it. Podcasts, TED Talks, videos, that sort of thing, like things that are contemporary, that show what people are thinking about now, and that are a little more responsive than, big organizations and certainly publications, as well as a retailer or a supplier or a vendor of some sort. Now, none of these retailers, suppliers, or vendors are sponsored. They're just they're very few museum specific or archival specific or art specific vendors in the Southern Ontario area. So this is just my way of starting to get those names out there for you. And once you've got the language, you can look at one of the websites, for example, for a retailer that I'll supply. And once you've got that language, you can actually Google it to find things in your own area. So hopefully you can find that of use, even if they're not local to where you are. So as I started to say in class, I'm going to start this toolkit segment with the book of the week, which is Museum Registration Method 6, also known as MRM 6. So my copy, I'm super stoked to add a third version of this to my bookshelf. I have been buying every edition since I was in museum school, and every year they tweak it a little bit and refine it a little bit, and then they start to add new things. So they're covering a lot more technology, for example, in the later versions. So it's an absolute must for anyone who's going to be working with collections, and that's either in the capacity as a registrar, where you're actually acquiring pieces on behalf of the institution, or whether you're working in loans, either incoming or outgoing loans. Same with exhibitions, traveling those exhibitions, bringing them in, sending them out. So it's an absolute must. Likewise, if you're involved in security for collections, or if you're involved in laying out new storage areas or anything like that, basically, if you work with collections, you're going to need this book. And if you're interested in even in a project management type role, where you're not directly hands-on with collections, but you need to have a sense of what's going on when it comes to with your larger team. Say you're managing an exhibition and a big international traveling show, it might be worth having it on your bookshelf as well, just so you know what other members of your team are going through to make that show happen. So it's an absolute must-have for your library, and for those of you who follow in the collections management footsteps of those before you, you will continue to add this to your bookshelf. This book first appeared in the 40s or 50s, and it's been updated. Well, this is the 6th edition, so it's been updated a number of times since then. But it has been in our office at work. We still have a copy from the 1950s that's well worn and well thumbed through. So definitely a must-have for your bookshelf. For your toolkit piece of equipment this week, I'm putting in an Optivisor. Because my philosophy has been to start small, and then we just sort of step back and we look at the bigger picture. So this seemed to fit with that theory. No matter what you do in collections, you're going to need to be able to see them clearly, figuratively as well as literally. So this is a great place to start. Because I'm working from home, I don't actually have my Optivisor handy, but I'm sure I can find a picture of me wearing it. It's kind of cool. You certainly feel you're one with the collections when you wear these. So this is a great piece of equipment. Add it to your holiday list, your wish list. They're not very expensive. They come at various price points. You can buy them at Amazon. You don't have to go to a museum-specific retailer. They have various levels of magnification, and that little, the lenses, you can actually, some of them, you can pop them out and change the levels of magnification. Some of them are fixed, so the less expensive ones are just fixed. If you're going with that, sort of a 2 times with a 10-inch focal length is sort of a good average. It gives you, twice, 2-time magnification. But you can go higher, depending on the type of institution that you're working for, the kind of material that you're working with. You may need to go higher, but I find for what I do, 2 times is fine. Our conservation team, they would have a series of different lenses that they pop in and out, but for basic condition reporting and that kind of work, that's fine. It's a one-size-fits-all as long as your head is in the realm of normal size. There's a knob on the back that you can just tighten it up. And one of the advantages to having this is it gives you hands-free viewing. So no risk of dropping your magnifying glass or your jeweler's loupe onto an object. And so it's nice to have hands-free. You might have a flashlight or something like that that you need to be shining on the object. It's just, trust me, this will be the first thing you want to get for your kit. And oh yeah, and the other neat thing about the visor, you can just flip it up so it tilts out of the way when it's not needed. So that's a really good piece of kit. As I say, they're not super expensive. I think you can get them for, starting at $25, $30, something like that. And then they go up in price. Of course, you get what you pay for. So that is something to add into your toolkit for sure. For the organization of the week, I thought to start out that we would look at our National Museums organization. So I chose the Canadian Museums Association. So this is the national organization for the advancement of Canadian museums. They represent museums for advocacy work with the federal government as well as others. They work for, quote, the recognition, growth, and stability of the sector. And they were established shortly after World War II. So they have been around for a long time. They've seen a lot of changes in the museum community. They've advocated for many of those changes. So this is a good organization to be aware of. They do professional development. They have a number of subcommittees. It's just a great way to get involved. It's a great way to network. So certainly have the CMA, not to be confused with the Canadian Medical Association, the Canadian Museums Association. Get them on your radar. Get them on your bookmarks. Join if you haven't already. And for those of you who aren't in Canada, there are similar organizations in your home country, I'm almost sure. I know in the UK, I can't believe that Germany wouldn't have something like that. So please do take a look. Just to sum up there, the CMA does do training, professional development programs, conferences, publications, networking, and they have a general body of knowledge and a dedicated staff. So I think I hit all of those points. So yeah, definitely check out the Canadian Museums Association. Okay, so we're moving on to the retailer of the week. And I'm starting with a staple in the Canadian archival market. Carr McLean is it's a Canadian company that specializes in museum, library, and archival supplies. Back when I was in your shoes, when I was a museum studies student, our conservation instructor came in back in the days of catalogs, and she gave us each a Carr McLean catalog, and it was like Museum Studies Christmas. It was so exciting. We were so excited because you can go through this Carr McLean. I don't know if they have a catalog anymore, but they certainly have one on their website, and they have everything that you're going to need going forward in your career. They even have some tools that are specific to working with museums and archives. So I would definitely have Carr McLean bookmarked as well. Everything from the basic tissue paper, gloves, those optivisors that I mentioned earlier, pens and for marking objects, Hollinger boxes, just everything that you're going to need. They even have showcases. It's a pretty much one-stop shop. So I highly recommend checking them out, and certainly make sure that you've got them bookmarked. And again, for those of you not in Canada, if you're not familiar with some of these retailers in your own country, a look at the Karl McLean website might give you some keywords to search for, so you can get something in your own geography, your geographic area. And I want to look at a podcast of the week. I have to admit, I'm kind of a podcast nerd, and one of the ones that really stuck with me was this one. It's called A History of the World in 100 Objects, and it was put together by the British Museum in conjunction with BBC Radio 4. And it is this ambitious podcast that aims to tell the history of the world based on the material culture collected by the British Museum. It sounds like a crazy idea, but it's actually a really well done podcast. Of course, it's backed by the British Museum and the BBC, so it's got some production value, and it's got some great collections that it's working with. The segments are about 15 minutes apiece. They don't exceed 15 minutes. And it starts with prehistory, and then it just works its way. It says here, 2 million years of humanity through the objects from the British Museum. And so it's a really interesting podcast. It's one that you can just listen to very easily. It's not a cumulative podcast, so you can pick and choose the episodes that you want to listen to. But it talks not only about the object, but how the production and how that influenced society, or if it represented trade and how that is represented in this object itself. Really fascinating. So I do highly recommend this one. And I think that is our last piece of the toolkit for today. So hopefully this gives you a few things to add to your toolbox and your bookcase, and I will try to get one of these done every week. And there we have it. So enjoy. Any questions or any suggestions, please let me know. Take care.